In Peru, government informed that as of Friday, the armed forces will support the national police in the Tacna region in order to attend to the migratory crisis in the Chilean border. Israeli forces killed a Palestinian teenager on Friday during a clashes in the occupied West Bank. On Friday, Sudanese citizens continue to flee as fighting raged once again despite the recent truce extension agreement. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm your new anchor, Heidi Maurel, from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news, stay with us. In Peru, government informed that as of Friday, the armed forces will support the national police in the Tacna region in order to attend to the migratory crisis in the Chilean border. The Minister of the Interior, Vicente Romero, said that the Minister of Defense, Jorge Chavez Queresta, will travel to the region of Tacna to continue monitoring the migration crisis that the Andean country is experiencing. The head of the Ministry of the Interior detailed that he met on Thursday with different regional authorities to note their security measures on view of the problem, stressing that there is a commitment in this regard. The Peruvian government declared a state of emergency in the border areas as ordered deployment of the security forces to restore order in at least 7 border zones. Foreign Affairs summoned the Chilean ambassador in Lima to lodge a formal protest over the lack of cooperation by the Chilean police in the incidents that occurred on Thursday in the area of Santa Rosa-Chacluta border. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs said that a group of foreigners tried to force their entry into Peru from Chilean territory. The government agency informed that it had been holding official meetings with its Chilean counterparts since April 21st to cooperate in finding short and medium-term solutions to the critical migratory and humanitarian situation in the border. In Mexico, April 30 is Children's Day. In this context, a group of children's artists are holding an exhibition that will also serve to support other actors. Our correspondent Daniel Rosas has this story.
This is how Victoria paints. She is 12 years old and participates with other children in a painting exhibition with a high environmental awareness.
It is a painting of a wanted poster because we are mainly looking for plastic, masks, plastic cups, plastic cutlery, because these are the things that pollute the most.
It is part of the exhibition Alevines del Arte 6, which, during the month of the child, presents the works of young artists with different techniques and themes for their own pleasure.
I like to paint. I have known how to paint since I was 2 years old. I am proud of myself that I can make them and that they look good.
The exhibition is held every year, but this time it not only serves to promote children's art, but also has an altruistic background.
In this case, we wanted to donate, obviously with the consent of parents and children, to help the actor's house. They were very happy, the children were very happy.
The Actors Association received the proposal very well and recognized the children's work.
The work of these little ones really makes us stop and try to analyze everything they are communicating.
Fortunately for the little artists and the other actors, the effort quickly paid off.
I really liked selling it because it's my favorite. Now I have already taken a picture of it because I also want to have it as a souvenir.
Altruism, color, and emotion are brought together in the exhibition at the Tabasco House in Mexico City.
Daniel Rosas, teleSUR, Ciudad de México.
And we continue in Panama. Panamanian authorities warned that the period of drought affecting the country will affect the availability of the water of both the population and the Panama Canal. The Panamanian Canal Authority, ACP, has stated that in the past month, water levels at the Alajuela Lake have fallen by more than 10%. Alajuela is one of the artificial lakes that supply water to the Panama Canal, and according to the director of the Institute of National Water and Sewerage, Juan Ducreut, the recovery of its operating level for the regular production of water could take up to 40 days. He also emphasized that the production of the water for the Panama City has a decrease between 20 and 30 million from a total of 2,050 million gallons per day. In this regard, the authorities are evaluating a contingency plan that includes rationing, optimization of the networks, and the use of groundwater. The president of Argentina, Alberto Fernandez, formalized the call of a primary and general elections in addition to setting the date of the second round. By means of the publication of the decree in the official Gazette of the Nation, the electorate was summoned to attend the open, simultaneous and mandatory primary elections on Sunday, August 13, 2023. Likewise, the date to elect the president, vice president, the 19 members of the Mercosur Parliament, and their respective alternatives will be October 22, 2023, while the second round will be held on November 19 if it's necessary. And the distribution of electoral materials for Sunday's general elections continue in Paraguay, as well as a ban of political propaganda comes into effect as of Friday, April 28th. The Electoral Justice Court said the distribution of electronic ballots, boxes, and other electoral materials continues in all the districts by the country, by land, water, and air. They also announced that as of Friday, the electoral ban will be in effect, and therefore all types of political advertising and proselytism will be suspended. The electoral authorities warned that any violation of the mandatory political silence will be implied as such punitive measures as fine equivalent to 100 minimum wage plus imprisonment for up to 6 months as stipulated in the Electoral Code. The Uruguayan Senate approved a bill that raises the retirement age from 60 to 65, despite the rejection of the opposition and union sectors. The initiative promoted by the government of Luis Lacalle Pou received 17 votes in favor out of 28 in the upper house. The text will now pass to the executive for enactment. As soon as the vote was concluded, President Lacalle Pou graded approval, describing the reform as fair and urgent. The unions rejected approval of the legislation, stated that it imposes more requirements on patients, does not count contribution other than those of the workers themselves, and lowers amounts destined to Social Security. The 5 Alma Games seen on Friday, the penultimate day in which athletics stand out with 15 finals. Venezuela leads the medals, tally leads by country with a performance of its two teams, A and B, that was gained 1,093 golden medals, 1,099 silver medals, and 1,073 bronzes. The Cuban delegations continues in second place, with 56 golden medals, 44 silver medals, and 43 bronze medals. And in only 2 days of competitions, the Russian athletes have accumulated 17 gold, 11 silver, and 3 bronze medals. Nicaragua and Bolivia are 4th and 5th in the medals, steadily both nations with 6 golden medals. The Caribbean islands, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and St. Kitts and Nevis both achieved a golden medal to extend 8 to the total nation who at least achieved the first place in some competition. And let's take a short break, but first remember you can follow us on TikTok account at teleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Pope Francis arrived on Hungary on Friday for a 3-visit date to the European country. The plane carried the leader of the Catholic Church along with 70 journalists landed in Budapest shortly before 10 a.m. local time. The Pope's trip to Hungary is the first after he was hospitalized on March 28 for 3 days for bronchitis. During the first day in his visit, Francis will meet with the Hungarian authorities and will hold a meeting with the local clergy. Meanwhile, on Saturday, the Pope will hold a meeting with vulnerable population and refugees, and later with young people. With almost 10 million inhabitants, Hungary has a Catholic population, 61% of its residents, according to the Vatican official sources. On Friday, Israeli forces have killed a Palestinian teenager during clashes in the occupied West Bank. A group of young Palestinians near Bethlehem were throwing rocks at Israeli troops who responded with tear gas and gunfire. The Palestinian Health Ministry named the victims as 60-year-old Mustafa Sabah. He was reported shot in the chest. The Israeli military said it was checking the report. The Israeli military stated that it had arrested a suspected fire and confiscated weapons in the raid in the city of Jenin that led to clashes with Palestinian fighters. Israeli forces declared they shot a suspect who hurled an explosive device at them. Palestinian TV said the soldiers wounded 2 people, including a 14-year-old boy, and the forces blocked the movement of ambulances and conducted arrests before withdrawing. In Lebanon, Iranian Foreign Minister Hossein Amir-Abdollahian reiterated Islamic Revolution support for resistance against the invading Israeli forces. During his visit to the Israeli-occupied territories border town of Marun al-Ras, the Iranian diplomat reaffirmed the government's support for the Lebanese and Palestinian resistance to the illegal Israeli occupation. He also stressed that both forces have demonstrated that the Israelis only understand the language of violence. Marun al-Ras underlined that Iran will be a stand by Lebanon even the difficult times while stressing the need for the unity of the Palestinian factions and people. During his visit to Lebanon, the Iranian foreign ministers announced in press conference the official visit of the Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi to Syria.
In this context, in the near future, we have drawn up a program and a plan for the visit of His Excellency, the President of the Islamic Republic of Iran, Dr. Raisi, to Syria.
To a question about the reestablishment of relations between Iran and Saudi Arabia, the Iranian top diplomat responded.
We do not assess the recent reconciliation and rapprochement between the Islamic Republic of Iran and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We do not consider that it is only in the interest of these 2 countries, but we consider that it is ultimately in the interest of the whole region. We believe that the current political developments indicate that the future of the region depends more on openness, convergence, and joint cooperation between all countries in this region.
In Iran, Army Deputy Commander for Coordination Affairs, Rear Admiral Habibullah Sayari, indicated that in order to use the resources and interest in the waters and be able to maintain its own security, his country must have presence in all seas. Sayari pointed out that while the Iranian Navy has sailed and is sailing off the U.S. coast, it has observed international regulations. He further assured that Iran is not a state that invades the maritime border of other countries, but its presence in the international waters is to show the power and capability of its nations to the world. The comments were made after Iranian Navy seized a Marshall Island flash oil tanker in the Sea of Oman and directed it towards Iranian territory water after the tanker collided with an Iranian vessel in the Persian Gulf on Wednesday night. As a result of the incident, several crew members of the Iranian vessel were injured and 2 are still missing. Tunisian Coast Guard have retrieved 41 bodies from the country's waters, raising the number of victims of refugee shipwrecks to 2,010 in 10 days. According to the spokesperson for the General Direction of the National Guard, Houssem Eddin Hebabli, the bodies were in a decomposed state, suggesting they have been in water for several days. Number of boats carrying asylum seekers moved from sub-Saharan Africa, Syria, and Sudan, trying to reach Italy from Tunisia, have risen sharply in recent months, in part due to the crackdown on departures by the authorities in neighboring Libya. Tunisia, whose coastline is less than 1,050 kilometers from the Italian island in Lampedusa, has long been a favorite stepping stone that refugees from attempting the perilous sea journey from North Africa to Europe. And teleSUR English continues to grow. You can now turn it in from 33 different African countries through StarSat. Dial 461 and enjoy our Latin American alternative broadcast. One final short break and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. On Friday, Sudanese citizens continued to flee as fighting raged once again despite the recent trust extension agreement. Hundreds have been killed and thousands wounded in the nearly 2 weeks of warfare between the army and the Parliamentary Rapid Support Forces. The intense warfare has caused the widespread destruction and has left people short of supplies, medicines, and cash, forcing them to leave. Tens of thousands of people have already fled to neighboring countries including Chad, Egypt, Ethiopia, and South Sudan. After fighting spread across the country, the World Food Programme warns that the violence could plunge millions more than into hunger and in a country where 15 million people, 1/3 of the population, already need aid to stave off famine. In Sudan also, the medical staff working all-out hospital in Omurdana have complained about lack of resources to cope with the influx of patients. Volunteers at the facility have also complained with there no fuel for ambulances and data dialysis department like resources. The doctor union, which tracks civilian casualties, have recorded at least 387 civilians killed and 1,928 wounded.
There is a huge lack in the medical teams and a huge lack in the hospital's facilities. In normal circumstances there are teams, now the shift is longer, as not enough doctors exist. There are only 2 doctors and 1 doctor who covers 1 or 2 departments, and sometimes 3 departments. In normal circumstances, such things do not happen where in each department there are enough doctors, usually 3 or 4 by now. The situation is so difficult. Volunteers are trying to run the hospital as possible because only a hospital in the hospital that is still functioning.
All the teams are lacking. What we are offering is the contribution. Men are divided into committees in a way that helps to provide staff and to provide transportation. We are suffering lack of fuel for transportation and in the dialysis department.
Chad is witnessing a new wave of refugees crossing the border following the military clashes that erupted in the neighboring Sudan on April 15. Humanitarian needs are growing in Chad while resources available to respond are sorely lacking. So far, up to 20,000 people have crossed the border into Chad and thousands more are expected in the coming weeks according to UNHCR. These new arrivals show that more than 400,000 Sudanese refugees are already taking refuge in eastern Chad after fleeing previous conflict. In total, Chad hosts 600,000 refugees. In this regard, to continue supporting the newly arrived refugees, host communities, 470,000 refugees already sheltering in Chad, and other vulnerable communities in the country, WFP urgently requires at least $163 million. If no further funding is received, the food security, nutrition, and safety of refugees will immediately deteriorate as assistance to refugees will come to a complete halt in May.
Our trucks now for the 10,000, 20,000 as per UNHCR and the government's figures that may have crossed already the border from Sudan to Chad. It's extremely important. We have already, prior to that crisis, 400,000 Sudanese refugees on that border that we were supporting. It's extremely urgent because in 6 to 8 weeks, we will never be able to reach those places because of the rains. So it's urgent. Also now for the host population, we should expect maybe more. We really need to preposition, and for that we need funding, we need resources to help the government in hosting, and now hosting more refugees that are coming. We really need help.
In South Sudan, the Interim Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation said he hoped the 72 hours extension of a repeatedly broken ceasefire in Sudan will be an opportunity to encourage talks between the African nations' rival forces.
This particular period of 72 hours or beyond could be used as a way to resume to the table of talk so that issues, root causes, and how this war can be averted can be now the space for us and others to join in. And whether inside Sudan, of course it is quite challenging because Khartoum International Airport is inaccessible.
Likewise, the senior official referred to the large mass of refugees seeking to escape the conflict who have arrived in South Sudan and expressed concern that the conflict could spread.
There is currently an enormous influx of thousands of returnees and refugees into South Sudan, thereby multiplying humanitarian needs. Sincerely speaking, the number is still being worked on, but the number should be over 10,000 who have crossed to South Sudan, both returnees and refugees and other nationalities. Our worry is that what happened if the war continues in the next few days.
In Burkina Faso, a new attack against the army left 33 soldiers dead on Friday, while 12 were wounded in the area of Ouagadougou in the province of Gorma. In a statement, the army stressed the intensity of the clashes and reported that about 40 terrorists were neutralized. It was also said that the transfer of reinforcements to the site allowed the evacuation of the wounded, who are currently being treated by the health services. These continuous attacks by terrorist groups have already displaced about 2 million people, while the fighting intensifies. On April 20, United Nations reported the death of about 150 people during a massacre in the village of Karma, in the north of the country. And we have come to the end of News You Brief. You can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok as well. For Telesur English, I am Heidi Maurel. Thank you for watching.